All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I'm istherenoonelse. And today's video, we are going to do a reaction and commentary on Bra We Got This's video titled Toxic Positivity in the Elder Scrolls Online and Why It's Bad. The reason I wanted to do this reaction video is twofold. Number one, I reacted to Nefis's video back in December talking about toxic casuals. And this just seems like it's going to be kind of similar. Slightly different, obviously. He's talking about toxic positivity, which it's kind of a central theme for this patch. And so I'm interested to see what he has to say in that regard. And number two, it's good to get out of an echo chamber, right? Like, I PvP. I talk to PvPers. My Discord is full of PvPers. The other Discords I normally go to are full of PvPers. And so my view on what stuff is happening isn't always like, it's good to get other perspectives, right? And so we're going to watch this video. We're going to see what another popular content creator has to say about this. And yeah, I'll chime in with any of my opinions on what I agree and disagree with, and we'll see what he has to say, but I'm sure it's going to be pretty good.
Toxic positivity. It involves dismissing negative emotions and responding to distress with false reassurances rather than empathy. It is an obsession with positive thinking. It is a belief that people should put a positive spin on all experiences. It is a form of gaslighting. This is a huge problem in the ESO community today. Toxic positivity isn't any good for anyone. It isn't being honest, and it leads people astray. Believe me, I know, because I used to fall into this trap as a person and as a content creator. I'm a very positive thinker, or an optimist you could say. Anyone that knows me knows this and knows that I love to look at the good in every situation. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. The problem is sometimes there isn't really any good in a situation, or maybe there is and it's just very small, but we hyperbolize how much of it is actually good. When I started creating videos for ESO, I had a genuine.
So already I just wanted to make a comment. I fall into this trap too. I am perpetually an optimist. I do critique and talk about changes and stuff, but there's a reason I play this game. There's a reason I play this game through a lot of the very bad patches and bad performance, and it's because optimistically I hope that it's different. I've always been a glass half full guy, and I've never looked at it this way. I've never looked at how my optimism can be appeared as a negative. And I guess I'll have to take that into account in the future because yeah, I've always personally looked at it as like, negativity doesn't allow you to accomplish your goal, right? Like if you immediately think that you're not going to be able to do something, you're just not going to do it. And so negativity is just counterproductive. And so my default is to not do that for that reason. So regardless of whatever I want to do, I try to be positive. Like let's do this. But I can see how that drips over into conversations with other people when they're talking about, how things are really bad and everything. And you're trying to you think you're trying to be helpful and cheer them up. But sometimes it's just like, no, sometimes it's just better to just know what's going on and acknowledge it and push towards change. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Purpose in mind of helping new players know that they can play this game, that they can have fun, and that with a little bit of time they can enjoy ESO the way that they want to. Sometimes early on in my content creation, I feel like my lack of understanding fully of a situation may have led to some toxic positivity from myself, and I want to apologize for that. However, through learning, growing as a person, and understanding more and more of the game of ESO, I've understood how to give my honest opinion without being rude or just agreeing with everything, and I've done this in my life too. So if you've been around ESO recently, you probably understand why I'm bringing this up. ZOS recently rolled out the first patch notes for update 35 with combat changes that were just not very good at best. And I'm not here to talk about those patch notes specifically today because there's already been a ton of conversation and a ton of videos made on this. But I'm here to talk about a bigger problem and what has transpired after them, and also what I've noticed over the past year in the ESO community, because regardless if these patch notes ever hit the live server or not, this is a conversation that the ESO community needs to have. Thank you again to my patrons. I really do appreciate it. You'll have more information on that at the end of the video. And so this is a conversation that content creators need to lead with. Nephis posted a video on toxic casuals last year, and it was a very, very good video, and it shed a lot of light on his perspective of what he has experienced in ESO in his tenure as an in-game player. I recommend you guys go watch it and be very objective in it, and don't just get mad, like actually listen to what he's talking about. I'll link it below in the description, but this...
All right, so I will also link both these videos. You should definitely go check out both of them. It was a very good video because I did a reaction video to it, and I almost never react. I think this is my first reaction video since, and so 6 months, about 6 months.
This video really got me thinking and allowed me to really see how toxic people get when an update comes out in ESO and they just agree or don't have any objective thoughts on the update because they don't want to upset ZOS, or they want to basically dismiss anything bad about their game. This is very unhealthy for a live service game. It's very unhealthy for life in general. It is counterintuitive to Unity. Unity doesn't mean you have to agree with everything someone does. What that is people pleasing. Unity can mean that you don't agree with someone, but you can give your honest feedback to help the community or situation become more unified with different perspectives. Because if you think about it like this, if casual players say, I want the game to be easy for me, if I want, this change, I want this change, and they have no regard for how that affects other players that don't play the way they do, how is that helping the community become more unified? Just the way an in-game player could say a very opposite statement. If this game is meant to be played the way that you want, then every type of player should have something they can do. For some reason, some casual players think that it is impossible for them to be toxic because they play casually. And that makes no sense because they are just being hypocrites to people that they themselves criticize. So why do I think toxic positivity is a bad thing?
Okay, so that was a really good point. And this is one of my biggest personal issues with comments in the community is you often get people looking out for number one, right? It happens, I bet, in every comment section. You can go check out his comments on his videos. You can check out my recent videos. There's always a few people in there that are like, who, from my perspective, they'll come and they'll be like, who cares about the PvP community? You guys are small. You don't spend any money. You don't matter. But you managed to get everything changed for you, and you took away my favorite set. Which is just like, those are some mental gymnastics there. But in my videos, I always try to talk about things like, hey, we can separate this through battle spirit. We can, we meaning the developers, like this can be changed through battle spirit. You can make these adjustments. I don't want to promote changes that drastically impact overland PvEers, like dungeons, trials and stuff. But there are times when stuff is absolutely broken in PvP and it needs to be adjusted. I know that there's a difference, right? Like when stuff is broken in PvP, I bet it's a blast. I bet it's so much fun in overland content and dungeons and stuff, and it's awesome and your character feels powerful. Who cares if your character feels powerful there? In PvP, it's game breaking. Like it really can be frustrating to deal with when everybody's running the same stuff, and it's just not fun. It's not enjoyable to have everybody in the same stuff. And so those are the two different things. And so to always separate this on my channel, I always talk about, like, we can make adjustments. We, meaning the developers, they can make adjustments through battle spirit, and you keep this separation. So balance adjustments with dots, healing, whatever, can go through PvE. And then also stuff that's very strong can either be excluded or given, like the rallying cry effect. While you have battle spirit active, this happens. Like rallying cry is a PvP specific set. They can do stuff like this. And so people that are only looking out for themselves or a specific class or whatever, like I'll just never really disagree with them on anything. It's just not going to happen, because the goal is to improve it for everybody while having as minimal negative effect as possible, right? And so I agree with this. You see this all the time, and yeah, you see people like, oh, I'm just playing the game. Like, I'm the biggest part of the community. You should cater to me. You should allow me to have this and this and this and this and this. And you guys took this away. I didn't take away anything. I just talked about something about why it's strong in this environment, and it got adjusted. That's all I did. I don't know if I had an impact at all. Maybe other people did, but yeah, like the finger pointing is ridiculous in this community sometimes. It just doesn't make any sense.
For the long-term health of ESO? Well, there are 3 reasons. It breeds a culture of participation trophies, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves with culture in general. And I'm sorry if I offend you with what I'm about to say, but everyone does not deserve a trophy. People that get trophies have shown that they are the best at what they do for a given moment or a given time period. End of story. Imagine if the NFL gave a Super Bowl trophy to every team at the end of the year after one team won the Super Bowl because they thought it was mean or it was unkind to not give every team the Super Bowl. It would make the NFL basically die because no one would have incentive to play for a Super Bowl anymore because it doesn't mean anything anymore, it doesn't hold value. Yep. This is similar to ESO in regards that when players have toxic positivity, it leads them to being a yes man on every single change that ZOS does because they think or want things to be easy, they don't want to work for things, and they wrap their whole being in a game, so any type of change that makes them uncomfortable means that there's a chance the status quo changes and their game isn't the same comfortable place. So what this means is they look at actual data sometimes and stare it right in the face, and they see that analytically it is obviously not a great change, but they say, this is a great change, ZOS. Keep doing what you're doing. The toxic community will leave and create a better place for the game. When in reality, it just creates an echo chamber of false feedback. There was an interview that Josh Drive Hayes did with the dev from Path.
Wow, echo chamber. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, that's the thing is ESO is a huge game, guys. It is a huge, all-encompassing game. There's so many different things that this game provides. And you can make changes, make improvements, add on to things that don't impact other avenues of the community. If ZeniMax wants to go through a huge overhaul in the game and they want to go after light attacks again or whatever, a big thing that they could do to overhaul things would be to finally have a rule set in place for separations of PvE and PvP. Finally, once and for all, just separate the two games because they're different. The rule set should be different. Skills should be optimized in different areas so that you can do these things. It would be so much better for the community if it was separated in this way. It'd be so much better. And then you wouldn't have this back and forth. And people, like, I'm going to talk about this a lot during the PTS, but we shouldn't be fighting with each other. We should be pushing these types of changes. These are the types of overhauls that would be great long-term for the game.
Path of Exile recently, where I gained a lot of respect for the Path of Exile dev because he said that they designed their game to not force you to play the game, essentially. And what he was meaning by this was some players that come into Path of Exile just aren't going to enjoy it, and that's fine, because it's not a game for everyone. He said that he welcomes people to try other games and to come back in new seasons and see if Path of Exile is for them again. I respect that because they don't try to cater to every single person. I just feel 100%. Like a lot of changes in the past 2 years in ESO have been to cater to as many people as they can, to get as much money as they can, and just has made ESO lose its identity in some way. Toxic positivity fuels this. It's not the only reason this happens, but it fuels it. Another reason it's bad is similar to the first reason. It nullifies real feedback. When someone craps on another player that has given real constructive feedback, it just makes it get lost in the masses because so many people are toxic to any sort of negativity. But that's the thing. Feedback isn't negative. It can be negative if it's said in the wrong way, but feedback is good because it allows something to get better. If you're doing something in your life that is negatively affecting you and you have close friends or a family member giving you feedback that is saying, hey, I don't think this is in your best interest, that feedback isn't negative. It's a positive thing that is trying to help you be a better version of yourself. But when you're in your perspective, you think that anything that goes against what you believe or what you think is best is a negative thing. It's the same concept with this situation. The third reason this is bad is
before we go into that, this is very similar to the video I posted a couple days ago where I was scrolling through some Twitter things and people were proposing good options. And it was just like like Skinny Cheeks posted that idea for a One Piece set, right? And he posted that, and the first comment was, "You meta crunch, number crunch, elitist, blah 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 blah." That's not constructive at all. Like, that's just detracting from a way to improve the game better. And it's happened on my videos as well. It happens all the time. And yeah, it takes away from the conversation if you allow it to happen. I try not to. Like I'll respond to those people, and like I'll either not respond or troll them back lightly as well. But the thing is that happens all the time. You try to talk about something and how good something is, and people are like, "Oh, I wouldn't listen to him. He's a solo and small scale player. There's only like 5 of them in PvP. He only wants to be a god." It's like, well, I didn't say that. And there's nothing that I talked about that implies that. Like, this is talking about how this is going to impact everything. Like Nocturnal's ploy, the video that I did a couple days ago as well, is a very powerful set, and it's going to impact a lot of people in PvP. But the argument on the forums is that small scalers don't want it because they're worried it's going to hurt them. Well, it's going to hurt everybody. like that's the point. And so, yeah, I don't know. The denigration and the insults and stuff is just, it gets in the way of good proposals and good ideas.
It doesn't hold ZeniMax as a company accountable. Not
Correct.
giving them real feedback and just encouraging everything they do is good doesn't allow them to be held accountable for their mistakes and decisions. It shows them, oh, this community is so gullible, like they will eat up anything we do because they don't know how to give real feedback. So we just do whatever we like. We can sell $100 houses on the Crown Store. We can keep loot boxes in the game that are predatory and that feed off people's spending problems. We can water down our content. We can do X, Y, or Z because it makes so much money and it doesn't negatively affect us.
And nobody's complaining.
It doesn't breed a good relationship with the company that makes the game. I'm not saying that ZOS doesn't make good changes, that there hasn't been great updates they've done, that they are pretty, responsive. But having toxic positivity doesn't help us hold them accountable. Because if they make a bad update, we need them to know that it's a bad update, and we need to tell them, and we need to give them solutions. So how can we change this culture in ESO? The first thing we can do is stop calling people whiners or doom and gloom because they give feedback or because they push back on something.
Yes.
Just stop. Every change is not the best change, and people are allowed to give feedback. So please just stop doing that. The other thing is players need to learn how to handle constructive criticism and how to give constructive criticism. So much of our world now doesn't understand how to handle feedback that is actually constructive. They get their feelings hurt, they don't know what to do with feedback because it breaks them out of potential cycles of being comfortable. And they quite frankly use that to be toxic towards other people because they don't want to change. This is sad, and honestly, I'm here to tell you it's okay to change, it's okay to grow. But in order to do that, you have to be able to handle people telling you what you don't want to hear sometimes. You have to be objective and have an open mind. Why do you think the world is so divisive now on every controversial topic? It's because no one can have a conversation anymore because one person feels that it's my way or the highway and there's no other way it can be said or talked about. You don't have to agree with someone's viewpoint, okay? But you can still have a conversation and understand where they're coming from. Everyone is different. Everyone has different walks of life. Different things cause different triggers in people's lives, and you don't have the same experience as someone else. So you've got to have an open mind on things because you have to understand that the person that you're talking with is a unique person that has a unique story, just like you do. The next part of that is people.
Yeah. Feels weird just agreeing with everything, but yeah, I completely agree. And this is something that I've tried to talk about on my channel as well, is if you disagree with me, point it out, bring forward an argument, numbers, whatever. Attacking a person doesn't accomplish anything. And the thing with, especially with social media is like, if you had a disagreement with somebody in person, they're still there, right? Like, they're still there. They still exist. You can't all of a sudden just like close your eyes and they're gone. But you can do that on social media with somebody you disagree with. If you say something and you lash out and they respond, you can just block them and be like, all right, well, I don't want to hear your shit. Like you clearly responded to me. Now I don't want to. I might not have anything to say, but whatever. I don't want to listen to it. And that's the problem with echo chambers. Like, that's a huge problem with echo chambers. Part of the reason why I'm actually doing this video and we're having this synergy here. Get it? Because there's synergies in ESO. Why we're having this synergy is because you need to branch out. You need to listen to other perspectives. And oftentimes when I talk about things, it's my perspective. Like, I thought that Oakensoul was way overtuned last patch. I brought forward my argument. It still made it to live. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. Like, it's okay. I'm just one guy, you know? Like, other people disagree with me. That's okay. Let's move on. Let's play the game. Let's make some funny meme videos. Let's do all these sorts of things, right? And the point is you can like somebody's content, but you don't have to agree with somebody in all absolutes. There shouldn't be this, okay, this person did this thing that I disagree with, this one thing, and now I don't like them anymore. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, especially when it's based around opinions or numbers or whatever. There's times where, like, I'll see a content, like, you know, we're all content creators and stuff, and so stuff gets sent to me and they'll be like, hey, can you believe this person said this? I'm like, yeah, it's his opinion. Like, I don't really care. It's your opinion. You're entitled to think what you want. I disagree, but I'm not going to roast you because you disagree with me. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Unless you want me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, obviously. But that's the thing, is we all play this game in different ways. We all experience things. We play different classes and everything. We go about things differently, and having that perspective is important. And having this feedback is important for ZeniMax as well, because if we give them the same thing, the same feedback, no, great patch, they're going to keep doing the same thing. They're going to keep making the same content. And I think that's part of what the issue with where we're at right now is a lot of endgame players, including myself, have gotten very lax with providing content on the forums, with providing feedback, with testing things, because frankly, the last few patches, like when performance was really bad, people stopped commenting, they stopped doing stuff, they stopped, like, PTS was a ghost town for patches upon patches of different releases. And so if you don't have endgame players, and obviously some people are, and part of the issue that people aren't responding anymore is because ZeniMax they also weren't listening. They were doing what they wanted to do. And I don't want to skip through that. There's been plenty of situations where people have brought forward good arguments on the forums, good forum posts and all these sorts of things, and nothing changed. And so I'm not trying to absolve it, but at the same time, like, I'm not blaming anybody. What I'm trying to say is because we're not there the way we used to, ZeniMax hears more from a certain community more than PvPers, more than endgame trials players and dungeon players and stuff, because we've dealt with this nonsense for so long. We don't provide feedback anymore because we've just been burnt out. And so now ZeniMax gets responses from one portion of the community, one portion. And yeah, they might generate the most amount of money. I don't know, but money's money. Like, I'm not trying to throw, like, if I can make $120 an hour, I'm going to try and do that instead of 50. Like, I would try to do whatever I can within a period to keep everybody as happy as possible. So it doesn't matter who the biggest slice of the pie is. If you can do other things to keep other groups appeased, you should do that. But if they're not hearing feedback from them, they're also not going to respond, right? And so I think there is some of both, but I will say that a lot of it is reactionary. Like, we got here for a reason, and it's because communication isn't always great, and the development team often doesn't respond and make changes, good changes. They'd rather push through content to, make a dollar, and that's what they do. And so I think it's a little bit of both.
People don't know how to give constructive feedback. If you're on the forums attacking the devs personally and telling them inappropriate things, then you're not helping the problem at all. This isn't how you give feedback. I understand you might be upset. You feel like maybe you've wasted your time, but directing your anger to the wrong things and acting upon it isn't appropriate. Instead, take those emotions and figure out a solution with them. Give a solution to the devs that is well thought out and constructive. When you give constructive feedback, you need to state what you have a problem with and why it's a problem, and then give a solution. This is the best way for someone to see a logical argument and potentially change their stance on something in the game. If you do that and you don't attack someone, then you have done all you can do with feedback. So don't let anyone get to you that calls you an elitist or toxic or something like that. And if the devs don't do anything about it, then you have to understand that they're not going to do anything and you have to move on. If we had more people in the casual camp doing this as well, this would be a powerful tool and a powerful effect on ESO. And another way we can change the culture, and this might sound bad.
Okay, really briefly. He talked about, I mean, he's got a 14-minute video here. And so I understand why he didn't dive into this a little bit. I agree. Again, I agree with what he's saying. And yeah, providing constructive criticism is very important. And some people can do it naturally and some people cannot. And that's okay. Like, not all of us are born good communicators. And that's more than fine. There's a lot of good books and content you can read. I learned a lot of what I learned because my wife has a master's in counseling and psychology. And she was a collegiate level counselor for a few years. And so her training and her job revolves around talking to people every day. So the thing that she taught me was, you don't attack the person. This should seem pretty obvious, but you don't put the other person on the defensive. Like, when you talk about things, you talk about what it is and how it makes you feel, or how you reacted to it, right? So if you're having a fight with somebody, instead of saying, you're really stupid because you did this, well, you're putting that person on the defensive by calling them stupid. Now they're going to get really angry. And as you guys know, when you're angry, you don't respond to criticism very well, and things got escalated for no reason. What you can say instead is something along the lines of, hey, when you did this, it really pissed me off because it seemed like you just were ignoring what I was trying to say. And, that's just not how friendships function. You're not putting them on the defensive. You're telling them, hey, with what you said, with how you said it, in this way or in this situation, this is how I reacted to it. And so it's constructive. You can apply this in ESO by stating, hey, instead of saying it's a shit patch, garbage, bad devs, blah, 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 you go after things individually. Like, hey, I think that these changes are good. If they're good, I think these changes are great. I think these changes are a little bit too far. I understand Stamina Sorcerer, especially with Savage Werewolf, needs to be adjusted, or it needed to be adjusted with Savage Werewolf, but I think this takes it too far. I think this will be unplayable in a PvP environment for this, and this reason. And you're constructive. You're not saying shit patch, shit changes. You're highlighting what the issue is. You're highlighting where the issue is, and then you provide options for how to get things changed. I get people that complain all the time about, oh, you're the one that got this changed. If I got it changed, it's because I brought forward a good argument and I laid it out and I showed. I tried to quantify what something is, why something's overtuned, and I provided adjustments to make it better. And if you want to do that, it's not hard to do. And so you can be constructive in that way. That's how you outline something. You say, hey, this in this environment is broken or is good because of this. And you provide actual reasons, and you can compare it to other skills, sets, whatever. And that's how you can go about doing these things. And so I think there's not a lot of people on the forums that argue in this way. Most people just attack, or they say, I like this, or I don't like this. There's no like quantifiable reasoning. And honestly, guys, put yourself in the developer's shoes in those situations. If you're reading something and people are complaining about it, and a bad change comes forward without you proposing options, at some point it's, if you're not going to provide like good alternative options for it to change to, why would it ever change? to a good alternative option. Like you have to provide these things. You have to provide this sort of information in a constructive way so that you can outline it. And if they agree with you, there's a good chance it gets adjusted. And so, yeah, I wanted to provide that tidbit in there because yeah, you just don't see enough of it. And there's ways to do this. And if you outline it that way, other players are going to see it. Other players are going to read your point of view and they're going to go, yep, I completely agree with this. This is a good point of view. This is, I agree. Like, it would be nice if we had this. And that's how you can get the ball rolling for different adjustments.
But it's honestly just to stop playing ESO for a little bit. Take a break. If you're burnt out on these kind of changes, the community, or whatever it may be, take some time away and play something else. Because in order to change the culture of toxic positivity, it may mean that if some of these toxic people don't want to change, then ESO itself needs to have some pruning done. It needs to go through a drought. It needs to financially affect the game. Because if you stop playing and the toxic positivity crowd starts seeing that there is no in-game community that's going to help them with things, that the game is dying, that the game is struggling to reach its goals, then it may be what it takes to wake some of these players up to realize that they are wrong. Speaking with your wallet is one of the best ways to get to a company's or a developer studio's attention, because money is king for the world right now. I'm not saying that that is the right thing, because it's not. Money is not the end all be all of life, but for how the world runs, a lot of times money talks. And when you start taking money away from people, you will see a lot of change, because a lot of people's motives in life are based off of money. So you start taking their money, you'll see some change real quick. So that is not meant to be a threat. That is not meant to be facetious. It's honestly just meant to encourage people to play something else, because the problem is when you don't speak with your wallet like that and you just sit on the forums and you keep giving actual good feedback, you get more upset and more upset and more upset. And you just play a game that you don't like, but you just don't want to give up because you've put so much time into it, right? And so when you do that, you just get more upset. And what that does is it causes you to possibly give toxic feedback. So just go and play another game and come back to it at another time if it changes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, right? But I'm getting to this point where ESO is a great game that has a lot of content for new players. But for someone who has played for 6+ years, they aren't really adding anything to the game or improving upon systems that are in the game to help players that are veterans like myself. It's becoming watered down. Rewards don't mean anything anymore. And I don't have the incentive to play the game as much. So I just want to be honest with you all that I'm getting a bit tired of it. And one day you will too if nothing changes, okay? Because you'll see that it's like the same thing over and over, and there's just not a lot of innovation that you see after you put that much time into it. So again, it's not that ESO is a bad game, it's a great game. But I'm just getting to that point, and I just want to be honest with you all on that. But if we truly want to uphold the ESO fam motto, then we have to start calling this toxic positivity out and stop harboring it in our communities. Because right now, we don't have an ESO fam because a family tells each other the truth. A family doesn't shun a person that does things differently. A family accepts that person because they are family. If you're going to stand by the banner of ESO fam, then that means casuals, in-game players, content creators, devs, everyone involved. But it does not mean you have to agree with everything someone says, does, or stands for. You just need to be honest with each other and yourself. And that may sound sappy and that may sound cheesy, but that's true. If you truly believe in that motto, then you've got to uphold all of those things that come with that. And so again, you may call me cheesy for that, but that is the truth. I just want to give a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. Again, you get early access to videos and much more. You can check out all my content down in the description and on our website. But I really hope this video finds people well, and I hope that it actually can cause some sort of change in the community and people will actually take this into account and improve themselves. But until next time, y'all, just remember, have faith to be great, and I'll see you on ESO.
Excellent video. I agreed with most of it, and I wanted to provide a last example before we end this video. But when I was in the military, we used to do missions. We used to do training missions where we would, they were training missions. They were making us better at what we were doing, and what we were doing was training to win a war. a future hypothetical war, right? And the thing is we'd go out on these missions, and after every mission, after everything we did, we would always have what we called an AAR. It was an after action review. It was what happened, what went well, what went poorly, what could be improved upon. That's what we did every time. And everybody in our platoon would have to go through and explain what they thought went well, what went poorly, and what could be improved upon. Because it worked in both directions, right? I wasn't an officer. In a platoon, you have an officer that leads, or you have a sergeant that leads your platoon. And when you're doing training exercises, it's not just training for the soldiers, it's also training for the people in leadership roles. And so they make a decision on what you do. And in a training exercise, it could go poorly, and it's the fault of the officer or the person in charge. And you go and have an after action review, and you talk about, what could have went poorly, because in a war situation, people can die. And so if grown ass men preparing for war can have constructive criticism about missions and what went well and what went poorly, we should be able to do the same thing on a video game. And that's why it's so funny to me. Like, I'll do videos where I'll talk about things, and people will be like, bro, quit crying about the game. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what you think crying is, but if you think this is crying, like, oh my God, you're soft. Like, you have to, you got to toughen up a little bit, because holy crap, there's a big difference between constructive criticism and saying, oh, ZeniMax sucks. Well, like, there's constructive criticism, and there's just insults. I hate this game. I hate this and this. And you have to be able to tell the difference between the two. And so constructive criticism is good. I don't hate the developers. I don't hate other players in the community. I think that some things are going to lead to, from my experience, are going to make things not very fun. And you see this happening from the PvE side as well. Like, hey, week 1 changes aren't great. They're not great. We're not enjoying this. PvPers are saying the same thing. Like, hey, week 1 changes are not great. We're not enjoying this. And it is week 1, but this is a bit more drastic of a week 1 from my experience, because typically it's like one side or the other, right? Typically, like, the trial and the PvE guys are either more in an uproar, or the PvPers are in uproar because there's a certain set that drastically impacts them. There's typically one way or another. And so to have this kumbaya moment where everybody's just kind of aligning, and they're like, how is this good for anybody? Like how are you going to change this? Honestly, right now, I would just consider scrapping most of it. I mean, I'm not saying you can't tweak it. I'm not saying you can't adjust it and make better changes, but to do so in a 2-week window, it's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of adjustments, to where it's just like, you know what, maybe we should give ourselves more time. Like, we're still going to do this, but let's just scrap it for now and keep the old thing that's been going so well. And then we'll introduce this at a later time when there's not as much backlash and not as many people willing to leave. Like, that's probably how I would approach it at this point. But I mean, I wouldn't blame them also for doing one more, like, week 3, like, these are the big adjustments. So yeah, very good video. Very outlined very well, very constructive, relating with the community. Like, hey, this is something I've done in the past as well. This is how you identify it. This is what you do. Very well done. I obviously agree with, like, all of it. So yeah, we'll leave a like over here. I'll provide a link in the description to his video. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. It's good to get other perspectives, right? And so hopefully other people watch this and, maybe changes their opinion on some things, and we go about creatively discussing things, because there's a lot of smart players in this game, guys. You could be one of them. You could be. I don't know. I don't know a lot of you that well, but you could have some awesome ideas, and you should bring them forward. You should talk about them. That's what the forums are for. It's what YouTube comment sections are for, to talk about these things. At least mine is. I don't know about anybody else's. I can't speak for other people, but I try to read all the comments. I try to comment on most of them. So yeah, that's the end of this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide them in the section below. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.